"We're going to give our lives in this final," says the goalkeeper Danilo, whose heroic saves helped deliver a victory in the semi-final of the prestigious Copa Sudamericana and earn Chapecoense a trip to Colombia to play Atlético Nacional in the first leg of the championship. More, full World Cup schedule. That match never occurred. In its place, we have this film, which details with the plane crash that took the lives of 71 people, including 19 players and the entire coaching staff, and more so with the attempts by family members, and, in a very real sense, that includes the entire city of Chapeco, to cope with the grief of sudden loss. Nossa Chape debuted at the South by Southwest Festival in Austin, has been in theaters in New York, Los Angeles and 24 other American cities, and now will be broadcast Saturday afternoon by Fox, at 4 ET, following the World Cup game between Germany and Sweden. Michael and Jeff Zimbalist traveled to the small city in southern Brazil intending to stay a month to make a film about the recovery effort and the decision whether to rebuild Chapecoense as a club. They wound up staying nearly the full course of the Campeonato Brasileiro season and telling a complex story of how people mourn differently and how a community can heal from such a terrible wound. "We didn't even know at that point if they were going to shut their doors as a club or try and play again that season," Michael Zimbalist told Sporting News. "They chose to play again, and we were going to film up until their first game. And the first game rolled around, and there were just so many fascinating stories unfolding, that were still unresolved, that we had to keep filming. Fortunately, the club and the subjects were on board with that, and Fox believed in the story, and we increased the scope of the project." World Cup 2018, groups, teams, key players to watch. The Zimbalists gained cooperation from the widows of several players, the city's leadership, the club's administration, and from the three surviving players, left-back Alan Russell and central defender Neto, both trying to recover from their injuries and play again, and goalkeeper Jackson Fallman, who lost part of his leg in the accident and becomes an ambassador for Chape. "How does a family, a community, respond to the loss of loved ones?" Zimbalist said. "This was a very interesting, larger family as it were. Because really the city of Chapeco, that team is the only team in the city. It started as a real bootstraps operation, with the stands in the dirt and the city supporting the club financially and housing the players and so on. The whole community knew the players who died as friends and family. It's a very interesting study of grief, and there were these two camps that were so divided about how to handle it. It was not what you expect in a soccer story. What one would not expect after the plane crash, and after Chapecoense had to recruit an entirely new team and new group of coaches, is for members of the fan base to be calling for the coach to be fired about 5 games into the season. Every game they played was nearly a miracle in itself, but fans quickly became angry Chape wasn't winning more. It's amazing," Zimbalist said. "Because on the one hand these fans are family with this team. It makes me think of like shareholders with a company. They might be your family, but if you're losing money, they're going to have to replace you. As a football institution, it's the wins. That's what counts." The Zimbalist brothers were responsible for the brilliant soccer documentary, The Two Escobars, which was part of the ESPN 30 for 30 series. Nossa Chape is a more intimate story but strikes its audience on an emotional level as powerfully as the Escobars did intellectually. More, Neymar hobbles out of Brazil training session. This is because the filmmakers were extremely successful in getting the subjects to open themselves to honest expression, whether in on-camera sit-downs or when being filmed in everyday situations, such as a lunch among widows and survivors or a board meeting for the Chape Club. "It really never is easy to have people open up on camera," Michael said. It's quite an undertaking to have a film crew come in, and no matter how much you talk about it beforehand and reach the same understanding, it's hard to expose your life, and particularly the more emotional moments of your life, to the world. I think it's a matter of time, being there consistently. They saw we were there every day, every step of the way, and letting them tell their story rather than sort of manhandle it in any way. That, over time, builds trust. Even so, people grieve at their own velocity, in their own way. Often with the subjects in this film, they would need some time. They would need to not be a part of the process for a few days, a few weeks. And then they would come back. The Zimbalists were insistent enough about letting the Chape principals tell their story that they chose not to use an English-language narrator to frame the picture. There are only a few words of English, from news reports about the crash, audible during the film. The players, wives, coaches and others speak Portuguese, so the speakers' words are subtitled. I'm really grateful to Fox Sports for believing in the project so much they were willing to do that, Michael said. To give an hour 30-some-odd minute film that does entirely subtitles a prime slot on Fox is really a bold move. But the reason we chose to do it was simple. This is a Brazilian story. There's Spanish in the film, too, because it's a Brazilian, Colombian story in many ways, but what it certainly isn't is an American story. What it certainly is a universal story. I asked Michael if, when showing the movie and observing audiences, whether he'd established an over-under on the number of times they were typically moved to tears. Because I counted mine at around 6 or 7. A lot of people that have seen it, one of the comments has been, "Wow, I can't believe how recent that was. It feels like it just happened," Zimbalist said. That sensation for me was present throughout the edit, because we were finishing the edit as it was the 1-year anniversary. So you would be looking at an archive of all the guys in the locker room chanting, "Vamos, vamos Chape," and pretty much every single one of them had died just months earlier. It's a lot to fathom.